We asked the question. Now we are going to answer it. Is the North turning against Tinubu? The question generated more debate, more comments, and more pushback than almost any video this channel has produced. Northerners saying yes, Southerners saying no. APC loyalists saying it is exaggerated, opposition voices saying it is understated. But almost nobody in the comments, in the press, in political commentary went through the specific documented reasons, the actual data, the actual statements, the actual policy decisions that have moved the North's political temperature from heated loyalty to something colder and more consequential. Today, AFRONEWSHQ is going through every single reason, one by one with specifics, because the most dangerous thing in Nigerian political analysis is a vague claim that everyone argues about without anyone actually examining the evidence underneath it. By the end of this video, you will not be debating whether the North is turning against Tinubu. You will be debating what he can still do about it and whether the window is already closing. Most channels will give you the headline. We give you the architecture behind it. If you've never been here before, you just found Nigeria's most analytical political channel. Subscribe, because what comes next in this video is the part they hope you never piece together. The 2023 Northern Bargain, stated and unstated. Every political coalition is built on a bargain. The North's 2023 bargain with Tinubu was both stated and unstated. The stated part was simple: APC loyalty, Northern votes, federal continuity. The unstated part was more complex, more specific, and more consequential. The unstated bargain had 4 components understood by every Northern APC political actor who delivered their state's vote for Tinubu. First, federal appointments reflecting Northern electoral contribution. The North delivered more votes than any other zone. The expectation was cabinet and agency representation commensurate with that contribution, not ethnically proportional in a formal sense, but practically visible in the senior positions that control economic and security policy. Second, a Northern-sensitive economic management posture. The subsidy removal and Naira unification were economic decisions whose pain would be distributed across Nigeria. The Northern expectation was that the administration would manage that distribution with Northern economic vulnerabilities in mind, specifically the transportation dependence, food import exposure, and FARC budget reliance that make Northern states more economically fragile under fuel price shock than Southern states. Third, a credible federal security response to the Northwest banditry crisis that Buhari left unresolved. This was the most urgent Northern expectation and the one most directly connected to daily life. Families in Zamfara, Katsina, and Kebbi were not asking for a different ideology, they were asking for security. Fourth, the Rotation Convention's implicit protection. The unwritten agreement that a Southern president is followed by a Northern one needed some visible acknowledgement in Tinubu's political conduct, some signal that the Rotation Convention remained operative and that Northern political actors were building toward a 2031 Northern presidency within the APC framework rather than being told to wait indefinitely. 3 years in, the Northern political assessment is that all 4 components of the unstated bargain have been inadequately honored, and that inadequacy is the documented source of every specific reason the North is turning. The single policy decision that has most damaged Tinubu's Northern political standing, and it is not the one most commentators name, we will identify it precisely. The one thing Tinubu could still do before 2027 that would most effectively arrest the Northern drift. Whether his administration will do it is the question. We will assess the probability honestly. Reason 1. The CBN appointment and what it signaled. When Tinubu appointed Yemi Cardoso as central bank governor in September 2023, the Northern political class received a specific signal. Cardoso is Tinubu's personal ally. He is from Lagos. He is ideologically aligned with the Bretton Woods economic orthodoxy, whose distributional consequences fall more heavily on northern Nigeria's food import-dependent, FAC-reliant economy than on Lagos's diversified commercial base. This was not simply an appointment, it was a statement about whose economic framework would govern Nigeria's monetary policy for the next 4 years. Northern APC governors who had expected a northern economic management figure in at least one of the top economic roles read the Cardoso appointment correctly. Their economic interests were not represented at the most consequential single policy lever in the Nigerian state. Reason 2. The fuel subsidy removal's northern impact differential. The fuel subsidy removal on Tinubu's inauguration day was the most economically consequential single act of the administration. AFRONEWSHQ does not assess it as wrong in principle. The subsidy's fiscal unsustainability was documented and the removal was economically necessary. But its distributional impact was not equal. In Lagos, the fuel price increase cascaded through an economy with relatively high average incomes, multiple transport alternatives, and a commercial sector with pricing power to absorb input cost increases. In Kano, in Gusau, in Sokoto, the same price increase cascaded through an economy with lower average incomes, single-mode transport dependence, and a food distribution system entirely dependent on truck transport whose costs are directly indexed to diesel prices. The NBS's own data confirmed what northern communities were experiencing. Northern food inflation in northern states ran higher than the national average for the full first 2 years of the Tinubu administration. The policy was the same across Nigeria. Its effect was not. And the northern political class's constituents who experience that differential daily have communicated their experience to their governors and senators through the most reliable political communication channel available, complaints at town halls, at markets, and at mosques.
Reason 3. The tax reform bills, the coordination trigger. The Tinubu administration's proposed tax reform bills, specifically the VAT distribution reform and the derivation-based revenue-sharing modifications, triggered the most organized and most publicly visible northern political opposition that any Tinubu policy has generated. 19 northern governors coordinated public opposition through the Northern Governors Forum. Northern National Assembly members organized a legislative bloc. The Arewa Consultative Forum issued formal statements. The opposition was not fringe, it was institutional, coordinated, and sustained. The tax reform bills matter not primarily because of their specific fiscal provisions. They matter because they established a coordination template. 19 governors demonstrating they can act together through formal institutional channels against a federal executive policy initiative is the infrastructure of political opposition. That infrastructure now exists, and once established, it does not require the tax reform bills as its trigger. It is available for any subsequent northern political grievance that reaches sufficient intensity. Reason 4. The Northwest security failure. The Northwest banditry crisis is the most viscerally felt northern grievance against the Tinubu administration. It is not abstract. It is measured in dead relatives, burned farms, kidnapped children, and abandoned communities. The Tinubu administration has conducted security operations in the Northwest. It has announced offensives. It has deployed troops. What it has not produced is a measurable and sustained reduction in banditry incidents that the affected communities can feel in their daily lives. The gap between announced security operations and experienced security improvement is the gap that northern governors' most explicit public criticism of the federal government targets. When Zamfara's governor, Daudal Lawal, says publicly that the federal government's security response is inadequate, in language unprecedented for a sitting APC governor directed at an APC president, he is not making a political calculation. He is representing his constituents' lived experience of the most basic expectation any government must meet, the protection of civilian life. Reason 5. The Rotation Convention silence. The analytically underreported northern grievance is the absence of any Tinubu administration signal on the Rotation Convention. A southern president who has never publicly acknowledged the convention, never gestured toward a 2031 Northern successor framework within the APC, and whose political management suggests a second-term focus that extends the convention's suspension indefinitely, is a president who has told the Northern political class that their pathway to the presidency within the APC framework is not visible from where they currently stand. Northern political actors who are now in their 50s, who have built careers within the APC framework on the understanding that a Northern presidency would follow a Southern one, are doing the political arithmetic. A Tinubu second term ending in 2031, a potential Southern APC successor in 2031, a Northern president no earlier than 2035 at the absolute best. That arithmetic is producing the kind of existential political recalculation that makes alternative frameworks, including the ADC opposition coalition, worth exploring.
The single policy decision most damaging to Tinubu's Northern standing is not the fuel subsidy, it is the tax reform bills. The fuel subsidy removal was economically painful for the North, but economic pain is manageable as a political grievance if it is temporary and if compensatory signals follow. The tax reform bills are different in kind. They attacked the Northern political class's institutional interests directly. The FAAC allocation flows that Northern state governments depend on for their operational budgets. That is not a consumer grievance. It is a structural political threat to the fiscal autonomy of 19 state governments. When you threaten a politician's budget, you threaten their capacity to pay the ward coordinators, the local government officials, and the community-level political actors whose loyalty sustains their political machine. The tax reform bills read to Northern governors as a threat to the financial infrastructure of their political survival. That is why 19 of them coordinated against it with a speed and discipline they have never shown on any other Tinubu policy. The fuel subsidy hurt their constituents, the tax reform bills threatened their machines. Reason 6. The Northern Appointments Scorecard. AFRONewsHQ does not deal in impressions. The specific appointment positions that matter most to Northern political actors are the ones that control economic policy, security, and patronage flows. Let us assess them. Central Bank of Nigeria, occupied by a Lagos-identified Tinubu ally. The Monetary Policy Committee's Northern representation has not been assessed by Northern political actors as adequate. This is the most economically consequential single appointment in the Nigerian state. It is Lagos-directed. Finance Ministry, led by Wale Edun, Tinubu's personal ally from Lagos. The ministry's economic framework reflects the Bretton Woods orthodoxy and the Lagos commercial economy's priorities. Northern voices are not reflected in its strategic direction. National Security Architecture, the Minister of Defense, the NSA, and the service chiefs who manage the Northwest banditry crisis operate under presidential direction. Northern political actors' assessment of the security's responsiveness to Northern security needs has been expressed publicly and explicitly as inadequate. The cumulative scorecard. The three most consequential federal executive appointments for Northern political and economic interests are all occupied by figures whose geographic identity, political formation, and policy orientation is Lagos or Southwest identified. That is not an ethnic argument, it is a governance representation argument, and it is the argument Northern APC governors have been making in increasingly direct public language since 2024. The Northern governors who are loudest are not the weakest, they are the ones with the most credibility to lose. In Nigerian political analysis, it is tempting to dismiss governors who criticize a sitting president of their own party as factional actors with personal agendas. That dismissal does not work in the current Northern context because the governors who have been most explicit in their public criticism of Tinubu's policies, Zamfara's Dauda Lawal on security, Sokoto's Ahmed Aliyu on economic policy, are not political lightweights seeking attention. They are sitting APC governors with state constituencies whose daily experience of the administration's policy failures is concrete and documented. A governor who publicly says the federal government's security response is inadequate is not making a career move. He is representing his constituents' lived experience
at the cost of his relationship with Aso Rock. The political cost of that public statement is real. The fact that governors are paying it anyway tells you something precise about how high the constituent pressure has become. Now let us assess what these reasons mean for Nigeria's 2027 democratic landscape and whether the counter-arguments can survive the documented record. The aggregate effect of 6 documented reasons. Taken individually, each of the 6 reasons documented in Section 3 is politically manageable. Appointment grievances can be addressed with a reshuffle. Economic pain can be mitigated with targeted relief. Security failures can be partially reversed with a sustained operation that produces visible results. Rotation convention silence can be broken with a speech. Taken together, the 6 reasons compound in a way that makes their aggregate effect qualitatively different from the sum of their individual parts. When 6 separate political grievances, each independently manageable, are experienced simultaneously by the same political constituency over 3 years, they stop being 6 separate complaints. They become a single assessment. This administration does not represent my interests. And that assessment, once consolidated, is qualitatively harder to reverse than any individual grievance. The consolidation of grievances into a single assessment is the political threshold that Tinubu's Northern Management Challenge is approaching. It has not yet been crossed by the majority of Northern APC political actors, but the 6 documented reasons are the evidence that it is being approached faster than Aso Rock's political management is currently moving. The most damaging single decision. We said we would identify the single policy decision most damaging to Tinubu's northern political standing. The answer, delivered in Pattern Interrupt 1, is the tax reform bills, not the fuel subsidy. The fuel subsidy hurt northern constituents. The tax reform bills threatened northern politicians' machines, and politicians protect their machines before they protect their constituents' pocketbooks. The coordination infrastructure that the tax reform bill opposition established is now the most significant political development in the APC's northern coalition since 2023, and it was triggered by a policy that directly threatened the fiscal infrastructure of 19 state governments. What Tinubu can still do. We said we would identify the one thing Tinubu could still do before 2027 that would most effectively arrest the northern drift. The answer has 3 components, all of which must be delivered simultaneously to produce the credibility required. First, a federal appointment reshuffle that puts a credible northern economist in the CBN's Monetary Policy Committee and a credible northern figure in a senior finance ministry role, not as window dressing, as a substantive signal that the economic management framework will reflect northern economic realities more directly from that point forward. Second, a measurable and sustained security improvement in the Northwest, specifically in Zamfara, Katsina, and Kebbi, that northern governors can point to in their own constituencies as evidence that the federal government's security investment is producing livable outcomes, not an announced offensive, measured reduction in banditry incidents over a 6-month period. Third, a public presidential acknowledgement of the rotation convention, not a constitutional commitment, a political speech in which Tinubu explicitly states that northern presidential succession within the APC framework remains the party's governing arrangement. That speech costs nothing constitutionally. It costs everything politically if it is not followed by governance that makes APC northern political actors believe the convention will actually be honored in 2031. The probability that all 3 are delivered before the 2027 primary season, moderate on the security component if resources are committed, low on the appointment reshuffle given the Lagos Economic Management Block's political entrenchment, and uncertain on the rotation convention acknowledgement, given that making it explicit invites a political accountability it creates for Tinubu's own ambitions. The North's political turn is not primarily about policy. It is about who controls what. Every specific reason on the documented list can be traced to a single underlying political truth. The Tinubu administration's power distribution has not reflected the North's contribution to its existence. CBN appointment, Lagos controls monetary policy. Tax reform. Lagos's commercial interests shape fiscal reform. Security architecture. Presidential direction prioritizes political management over northern security urgency. Rotation, convention, silence. The northern pathway to the presidency remains undefined. Taken together, these are not 6 separate policy failures. They are 6 manifestations of a single pattern, a governing coalition in which the North delivered the presidency and does not control the presidency's most consequential instruments. Northern political actors have recognized that pattern. Their response to it, the tax reform bill opposition, the Northern Governors Forum's coordinated language, the drift toward alternative political frameworks, is the rational political response of a group that has recognized it has been structurally marginalized within the coalition it made possible. Political stability assessment. The 6 documented reasons are not 6 separate problems. They are 6 symptoms of one structural condition, a governing coalition in which the North's electoral contribution has not been matched by its governance representation. Addressing symptoms individually is insufficient. The structural condition requires a structural response. What happens if Tinubu does not address the 6 reasons? If the 6 documented reasons remain unaddressed in any substantive way before the 2027 primary season, the northern drift moves through 3 predictable stages. Stage 1. Organized non-endorsement. Northern APC governors decline to publicly endorse Tinubu's 2027 re-election in the period leading to the APC primary. They remain technically within the party. They stop visibly mobilizing their state structures behind the incumbent's campaign. Stage 2. Primary season fragmentation. The APC's 2027 primary produces internal northern candidates who contest Tinubu's re-election nomination, not as serious challengers capable of winning the primary, but as vehicles for demonstrating northern delegate dissatisfaction and extracting concessions before the primary concludes. Every northern candidate in a Tinubu primary is a bargaining chip whose withdrawal is the price of a political accommodation. Stage 3. General election turnout suppression. Northern APC governors and their ward-level machines do not defect to the opposition in 2027. They simply operate their machines at a reduced intensity. Voter mobilization that previously produced 70% plus APC turnout in northwest states produces 55 to 60% turnout instead. The opposition does not need those states, it needs to reach 25% in them. Turnout suppression at the margin is the mechanism through which the constitutional threshold arithmetic shifts from the APC's favor to the opposition coalition's reachable range. What happens if Tinubu addresses them? If Tinubu delivers the 3-component response identified in Section 4, appointment reshuffle, security results, rotation acknowledgement, before mid-2026, the northern drift slows. Governors who have been publicly critical moderate their language. The Northern Governors Forum's coordination becomes less assertive. The tax reform bill template is not applied to additional Tinubu policies, and the 2027 primary season opens with Northern APC political actors who have assessed the accommodation as sufficient to make APC loyalty more attractive than alternative political frameworks. That outcome is achievable. It requires political will that has not been demonstrated at the required scale in the first 3 years of the administration. Whether the administration can and will demonstrate it in the 12 months before the primary season is the central question for the APC's 2027 coalition health. 3 signals to watch in the next 90 days. First, the CBN Monetary Policy Committee's composition at the next scheduled appointment round. A northern economist entering the MPC is the most visible signal that the appointment grievance has been heard at the monetary policy level. Second, the NBS food inflation report for the Northwest for the next 2 quarters. Declining food inflation in Zamfara, Katsina, and Kebbi is the most directly politically relevant economic indicator for northern voter behavior. It measures whether the economic pain that drives the northern drift is worsening or reversing. Third, the fate of the tax reform bills in the next National Assembly session. If the bills return substantially amended on the FAAC allocation provisions, it signals that the administration has absorbed the lesson of the Northern coordination and revised its fiscal reform approach. If the bills return largely unchanged, It signals that the administration has assessed the northern coordination as manageable through party discipline rather than requiring substantive policy accommodation. The North is not turning against Tinubu out of ethnic hostility. It is turning because 6 specific documented structural reasons have accumulated over 3 years into a political assessment that the administration does not adequately represent northern interests within the coalition that brought it to power. Those 6 reasons are the CBN appointment, the fuel subsidy removal's northern impact differential, the tax reform bills and their machine-threatening fiscal provisions, the security failure in the Northwest, the rotation convention silence, and the northern appointment scorecard's consistent southward lean. None of those 6 reasons is irreversible. Each one has a specific policy response that would address it. What is uncertain is whether the Tinubu administration's political management logic, which has prioritized Lagos coalition management, Wike's South-South management, and APC National Party management, can reorient toward northern coalition management with sufficient speed and credibility to arrest a drift that has been building for 3 years. The clock is running. The window is not closed, but it is closing. Watch the MPC appointment. Watch the food inflation numbers. Watch the tax reform bills. Those 3 data points will tell you, more precisely than any political announcement, whether Tinubu's administration has read the northern political situation correctly and responded to it in time. You now know something that most Nigerians watching the news today do not know. What you do with that is up to you. Share it, debate it, challenge it. That is how democracies survive. AFRONEWSHQ. Nigeria deserves better analysis. See you in the next one.